Hey guys, yeah, no, this is episode 17 of the Rugby Recap. You have myself as well as the Kiwi lads. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, mate. There's some big games coming up just around the corner. The BOKS taking on Ireland, world number one versus defending champs. A few other big games taking place on the Monday morning New Zealand time as well, just to slightly even out the pools, work out exactly who's making their way through. But the thing is, even with those results, nothing is certain yet. So it's going to be a lot of excitement as we get to the end of this Rugby World Cup group stage.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more of you there. And again, like you said, there is also Scotland, Tonga, which we'll go over, as well as Wales versus Australia. And yeah, no, let's just dive into the big one first, which really is the Springboks versus Ireland. It's gonna be a massive game. Probably you could argue it's probably the biggest game in terms of the group stage, in terms of all the group stage matches. But I mean, again, when you have All Blacks France as the opening game of the World Cup, it's pretty hard to beat that, I think. But hey, this will definitely be a close second by any degree.
Or
Yeah, just first,
first.
yeah, or first maybe, or first. I mean, I don't know. I asked my dad this question, and he actually had a hard time kind of answering it because like normally you say the opening game is the big one, and particularly between those two sides, but I guess at the moment, there's just a lot of buzz around this game, and it's first free second as well. So it's gonna be very interesting to see who kind of wins this. Because to what I recall, like what was the last time these two sides played? Because I think it was last year in the Autumn Nations, if I'm not mistaken. I believe
Yeah.
Ireland did win that. I think it was like 19. It was like 1916. It was a pretty close scoreline to what I remember. In that sense, but yeah, just first of all, what do you think about this game? Got into it. Who do you see as the favorites, but also just which players are looking out for? So let me know everything that in that sense.
Well, I think it's very hard to pick a favourite for this game because depending on what fan base you ask, depends on who the favourite is. Because the Irish fan base, they are confident that the Irish will be able to continue that massive winning streak that they are currently on. You talk to a Springbok supporter and they'll tell you all day back-to-back World Cups for the BOKS here. Both sides going
Yeah.
with very good starting lineups. And I feel like the thing is, other than maybe one or two players, this is about as strong as what both sides could have gone with in this game. So neither side taking the challenge lightly, which I feel like not only will add to the atmosphere of the game, but also just add that intensity. It's going to be a good one. I'm excited because at the end of the day, it's that big question mark of Marnie Libbok versus Johnny Sexton. Is it going to be Libbok's playmaking that helps the
Yeah.
Springboks over the line, or will it be Johnny Sexton's experience, the veteran, being able to score himself 3 tries already in this Rugby World Cup? But Marnie Libbok, I think a lot of pressure is on him due to that kicking tee. I know that some people thought that Andre Pollard may have been popping his head back in at some stage soon, but I still think that Libbok is the man for the job at number 10 for the Springboks. Yes, he's had a couple missed kicks in the past, but the man, the way he's able to set up tries is definitely going to be valuable for the Springboks up against an Irish side who, yes, they have conceded a couple tries, but they have still scored a lot more than they've been conceding throughout this Rugby World Cup. But I have a fun stat for you, Tim. The
All
BOKS are
right.
the only team at the moment in this Rugby World Cup to not concede a single try. Argentina were close. They did have
Yeah.
themselves their game up against Samoa. They've just conceded the one. But for now, the Springboks, the only team that
Is
haven't
that
conceded one.
correct? Didn't
We'll go with that.
I could be I don't want to like just say you're wrong in this sense, but isn't England in that conversation as well? Because
No,
the
they
thing is,
conceded to Argentina in their first game.
they did very late, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay. I forget that. I forget that try. But yeah,
Everyone
no,
does. That game was 3 point central.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. But no, I guess in this game, I mean, yeah, you're definitely right in saying that Matty Libbok versus Johnny Sexton is definitely a key battle in the game. But for me particularly, I think one to look out for as well is definitely the battle between Demian Delende and Bundyaki, because Bundyaki has been playing just he's been in the form of his life recently in terms of the first 2 games we've seen with him, getting 2 tries in each game. Again, yes, I know a lot of people may say, they're obviously playing against weaker opposition in those 2 games, but it's still pretty impressive to, make your mark and obviously make a stance in the game. And yeah, that's been, he's been really good form recently. So you want to obviously give him, props in that sense. But again, if there's someone who can maybe contain him, it's definitely Dylan Delende, because he has a lot of experience in that front, and you can definitely, I guess, I don't know, maybe kind of break down the pattern of play that Bundyaki normally, that they kind of go for him because he's a big player in terms of their attacking plays. So it's going to be interesting to see if Damien Delande can kind of break that down a bit. But at the same time, Damien Delande is also known for his kind of attacking play and kind of busting through, kind of, I don't know, breaks essentially in the line. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping he can do that within this game as well. But I guess if I was the other key battle, not really a key battle, but just more of an overall battle, is really the loose forward trios in terms of both sides. Because you have, for Ireland, you have the likes of Peter Armani, you have Josh Van der Veer, as well as, Ken Doris. And then on the other hand, with South Africa, you have the likes of Jasper Visa, you got Peter Detroit, you got Sia Khaleesi. So, it's a pretty, big battle in terms of that loose forward pack, because I think both of them are pretty balanced overall. There's not really anything I can say against either one of them. I mean, look, both sides are incredible. So it's very hard to pick out, weaknesses in either side, of course. But I guess in just terms of that loose forward pack, like, who do you think will be the one player out of each loose forward pack to stand out the most in this game, or who could make the impact for each side?
Well, I think Peter O'Mahony for the Irish has shown that even if he gets hit by a truck, he's getting up.
Yeah.
But Caelan Doris, I would say, in this game is going to be absolutely crucial for the Irish because of his work so far throughout the Rugby World Cup. He's an absolute tank at number 8, and he seems to just keep on going and going and going. And a factor that you haven't mentioned yet about the loose forward trio, we've got to remember the Springboks have got that 7-1 split off the bench, so they will have extra players that they are able to bring on at halftime or maybe even that little bit later, be fresh as a daisy, and all of a sudden the tempo of the game just increases that little bit more. I think that Khaleesi so far throughout 2023 since returning has been pretty strong. Jasper Visa, he needs a big game seeing as they haven't got Dwayne Vermeulen to come off the bench, so there's a little bit of extra pressure on that man, but then saying that they have got those options off the bench just in case they do need to replace him. That 7-1 split, though, compared to the 5-3, the extra two forwards, there is a massive difference between the two sides because a lot of people thought when they saw the 7-1 of the Springboks, 6-2 split for the Irish. But the Ireland side, they are sticking to what they've done throughout their last few games. And the big thing for me is those two extra backs off the bench. I believe that we're going to see Ireland trying to use that ball through their backline like they normally would. They are normally very crisp in the way that they can get it out there. And also that brilliant ruck speed is something that may play factor in this game.
Yeah.
Whereas for the South Africans, I mean, they've got Faf de Klerk. They may consider a little bit more of a kicking game early on, although we haven't seen too many Southern Hemisphere sides win that kicking battle up against the Northern Hemisphere teams so far. So that will be a little bit of a concern for the BOKS, but I'm talking only like 2% concern.
Exactly, yeah.
Because the other 98% are going out there like the world champs they are and trying to make a statement.
It's interesting because, when you look at the kind of off the bench, just going off the Springbok bench here, it's going to be a very interesting battle, with a 7-1 split as well as a 5-3 for Ireland. Again, I do believe, the BOKS will be able to kind of capitalize on that Irish, kind of ruck speed because, they are considered the best in the world on that front. And you have to give them props on that because they have been, their ruck speed is what kind of allows them to kind of win games because, they kind of target the middle. And then obviously when they get through the middle is, enough, then they obviously split out to the wingers with Lowe as well as Hansen, and they just capitalize on that. So that's Ireland's game plan. And they're probably the best in the world in that. Not probably, they are the best in the world in that kind of, in that play. But for the BOKS to kind of, I guess, like hinder that progress and kind of just stop them in their tracks, that 7-1 split could obviously help them because, it allows them to have fresh legs in the process. And with Marco van Staden as well as Quagga Smith coming off the bench, they're very, I guess, versatile in the sense where they can come, they can switch in and out where, we've seen Marco van Staden play at 6 and 7, Quagga Smith has played at 7, 6 and 8 really. So they can, they're very versatile and I guess who comes off in that sense. But what do you think in your opinion, like when those two come off, because eventually they are going to replace two of the loose forwards in this team, who is the one that stays on the field? Because that's the interesting. I can't even think of what they'll do here because in my mind I'm thinking what they'll do is actually they'll take Jasper Visa off for Quagga Smith, and Quagga Smith will take his place, and then I think Marco van Staden could actually take Khaleesi's. I could be wrong in that sense, but it just depends, I guess, on the way the game is flowing and I guess what's happening at the meantime. But what do you think on that front? Like, who do you think they may replace in terms of that loose forward pack?
I think they might actually leave Jasper Visa on the field.
Okay.
Mainly because last game we saw Dwayne Vermeulen play the full 80 and
Yeah.
number 8. And I'm thinking Quagga Smith, they may actually save him a little bit later in the game just in case there is some sort of back injury. Because I've heard a lot of people talking about the fact that he could play at inside centre, he could be at outside centre, somewhere in that back line from his sevens experience. Could also play at 7 for Peter Steph-Totoy, and I think that will be the sub if they do get to that later stage and there aren't any injuries. It's all going fine for the Springboks. I think that Peter Steph-Totoy may make his way off the field. Sia Khaleesi, I think, for fun starting, seems like the straight swap there. Unless, of course, something's going drastically wrong at line-out time, then we may actually see Van Staden take on that hooker role, like it's been rumoured that he may. And then Dion Fourie goes into that loose forward trio for the later stages.
Yeah, no, and I also just thought of it, but we're actually going to see Eben Smith back now, coming back from that injury in the Scottish game. Again, he didn't play in that Romania game, but he seems to be fully fit now, 100%. So that's obviously a good thing from a BOK perspective. I mean, in terms of the Irish, I think they have no injuries that we kind of have to worry about on that front. They've been pretty good, actually, in terms of, I guess, the whole camp in that sense. They've been very fortunate in that sense. But yeah, I guess before we kind of move on from this game, just let me know what you think in terms of, I guess, like the prediction, this at least. Like, who do you think will come out on top in this one?
Well, as we know, my predictions are terrible, Tim. I get like 95% of them wrong.
If we had an Excel sheet, we could probably check that.
But that will make the Irish fans very happy because I am backing the Springboks to win, and if I'm 95% wrong, then that means maybe a little bit of luck for the Irish in there. But I'm saying 17 points to 15. I think it's going to be extremely close in this game and only a few points difference. And that's actually my hope as well. I hope that neither of these sides run away with it because there is a chance that this could be the World Cup final.
Exactly. I was thinking that as well, by the way.
I also said earlier on in the week, I wouldn't mind seeing a draw in this game as long as they do meet in the World Cup final. I know as a Springbok supporter you don't like that, but, imagine the scenes. Imagine it's a draw here and then they meet in the World Cup final. Clean slate for 2023. Neither side having the wins. They go with similar lineups. They learn from their wrongs and then they put on one of the best World Cup finals we have ever seen in a game of rugby.
It would be fascinating to see if that actually was the case because, I mean, even before this, I think yesterday actually, I went over the kind of like World Cup predictor just to go over to see who kind of meets each other in the quarterfinals. And, it's interesting because, like you said, there is actually a possibility where Ireland and South Africa could eventually meet up in the final. But again, it takes a lot for it to happen because obviously we don't know what's happening really today. Like a lot of the games today with, South African Ireland, Scotland, Tonga, as well as Wales, Australia, it'll be a key one, will determine a lot what will happen in terms of knockouts and kind of who meets who. So it's going to be interesting because I think after today, I think the only thing that we're going to still be left to kind of wonder is who will kind of, I guess, be with England, you could say, in that Group D. Because, again, I think most people can kind of confirm now that England will go and progress through into the quarterfinals. They'll most likely secure, I guess, the first place now that they've beaten Argentina as well as Japan. So I do believe they'll come first. It's just now who comes second in that one because that's where it gets a bit fascinating in that sense. And, we still have to see I think Japan versus Argentina, which could come out, really just turn out to be, the battle for that second space. So we'll see what happens on that front. But anyway, moving then from this South Africa Island game towards Scotland, Tonga, again, in the same group as well. The Scottish obviously had a bye week, so they're kind of a bit rested in that sense. But they're definitely, I guess, had a deep, kind of brief, really, or overview of just what happened in that BOK game and kind of bounce back on this into this Tonga game. So in your opinion, what do you think the Scottish will have to do in this game to kind of just, wipe the floor against the Tongans? Because it'll be difficult. You can't just say, they're going to do it, but how do you think they're going to actually do in this game?
Well, I think the big scenario in this game is Tonga are going to be throwing absolutely everything at Scotland. Yeah. And Scotland know that. They know that it's going to be a very physical outing. The side that they've gone with, though, if they can manage to break through that Tongan side, they've got the potential of walking away with a bonus point relatively early in this fixture, I feel. Mainly because Tonga, in their game up against Ireland, we didn't quite see them play the same way that we had throughout that Pacific Nations Cup. I wonder whether or not that is due to the warm-up games that they had, those two games up against Canada, maybe not quite as tough of
Yeah,
an opposition
exactly.
as some of the other teams. But yeah, for Scotland, the side that they've gone with here, Finn Russell at 10, very curious to see how he goes. And I just want to see more on Duan van der Merwe. He was a player that was drastically lacking in that first game up against the Springboks. He's going head-to-head with Solomon Kata, so we're certainly going to hear some shots coming from that side.
For
but should be an entertaining game overall, and I feel like it's going to be quite a fast-paced one. Neither of these sides will want to try and, I guess, wear down the opposition in a slow, methodical game. It's all out swinging, hoping for the best, and get yourself the victory.
So, I agree with you. I mean, like, it really comes down, I'd say, towards, Duhan van der Merwe, because, again, he's a player who he didn't really make as much of an impact in that first game, because, I was there watching him live, and he didn't have enough time on the ball, really, to kind of make an impact. And to be fair, I think Darcy Graham is probably the player who had more, I guess, space down the wing to kind of, I guess, chase the game or kind of, I don't know, get some meters in the sense. But yeah, I do think Finn Russell, this is going to be a big game for him, because I do think the BOKS were pretty good in actually kind of kind of just hindering him in his tracks and just making sure he had no kind of impact in the game. So he'll be looking to kind of unleash himself in this one and make sure he can kind of make that impact overall. So yeah, I think personally Finn Russell is the kind of the player to look out for. It may be a very obvious one to say, but I just think he needs to obviously kind of make his I guess return, you could say, and get some revengeance, if you want to say the least. But I guess from a Tongan point of view, because again, like you said, they didn't have the best of games against Ireland, and yeah, they just didn't have a lot of possession at the end of the day. But whenever they had possession, they kind of like knocked it over, or Ireland were able to kind of just turn it over with ease. So, like, what do you think the Tongans have to do in this sense? Because I mean, the only positive I can think of the game really was when, yes, they scored a try with Vavafita, great moments in that sense. I mean, Charles Piatel with a nasty step against, who was it? Who was a nasty step against,
Hugo
actually?
Keenan.
Yeah, it was Hugo Keenan.
Hugo Keenan got stepped about 3 times, which
was
might
like
be a bit of a concern.
Yeah,
there
was like one where I was like, whoa, like this, he fell on his ass really on that one. But no, it'll be interesting to see what happens in that sense. But yeah, just what do you think overall for Tonga? Like, how can they improve their game in this one?
I think it's just the lack of game time together as a side that is hurting them just that little bit at the moment. But I mean, they've got that physical fallback, and the tricky part is trying to use it in a way that doesn't get you penalised at the moment. Because as we know, we've seen quite a few yellows, quite a few red cards throughout this Rugby World Cup, but it's just about enforcing that physicality without, I guess, going too far in that regard, because they've got a decent backline. If they can get it through, I'd say their centres with Piraki and Malakai Fekitoa, get it out wide to Kata as well as Tomapo, like that is a dangerous combo if they can get it right, and it's whether or not Scotland give them enough time to be able to do so. So I think that they need to really... The tricky part is playing to their strengths, but also they do need to go for a couple risks every once in a while, play a little bit of an unstructured game so that Scotland aren't able to just read what they are going to be doing. It will be a tricky game, but if Tonga are able to show up and have a big performance here, it will certainly give them confidence going into their game up against the Romanians. I think a big question mark, though, is let's just say, for instance, Scotland win this game. They get themselves the winning bonus point. 5 points on the board for the Scottish there. If for some reason that Springbok Ireland game is not close, and one of those sides, I feel like in this scenario, it would have to be Ireland lose that match, Scotland play Ireland in the game 2 weeks' time. Do you see any chance of Scotland still making it out of the group stage, or do you think at the moment it's still that 2-horse race between the BOKS and Ireland?
Yeah, look, it's actually a very difficult question because, again, it really, like you said, it comes down to, I guess, like the scoreline in this game in terms of Ireland South Africa, because that's what's going to really determine if Scotland even have a chance in progressing through. Because if Ireland, whoever loses the game, example, if it's a close scoreline, of course, they're going to pick up that bonus points in terms of that losing bonus points, and that also might edge them closer towards that gap, which may not allow Scotland to, even if they get a bonus point in terms of their victory, and may not allow them kind of overtake them by one, or kind of make it that points difference. That makes sense. So it's interesting because I saw this in our prediction video where a lot of people were kind of I guess questioning my answer in terms of if my judgment in terms of who I think will win. I think it's really close, guys. I actually look. I'm always as a BOKS fan. I believe the BOKS will win, but I would never disregard Ireland in this sense because like they're the best team in the world. right now they're still first. You can never write them off in that sense, and they've proven that. You know, the record speaks for himself in terms of their their winning form in terms of games. So you got to obviously give them props in that sense. But I guess in terms of if Scotland have a chance, it's difficult. I'll definitely say it's difficult to do. I just I. I guess if you want to make it like a grand slam finish in terms of like this group, you'd obviously want the BOKS to win it. So then it means that Scottish have an opportunity to overtake, I guess, the Irish. That's like really the only way it can happen. And I guess obviously the Scottish will be in a way cheering for the BOKS in this one, because it would allow them to obviously kind of I guess prepare for that game, or kind of be in a better mindset going into the game against the Irish, because that is the final game, I believe, of that group. But the problem with the Scottish, however, is that they have to play 2 games, and they have no rest now. Their bye week is already gone, so they have to go 2 games now, get a bonus point within each of the games now. So that's a priority for them, and then play Ireland. So it's a big, I guess, I don't know, it's a big challenge really for the Scottish, because it will come down towards the numbers they have as well as the depth. But look, I'm never going to say they don't have an opportunity, but we'll know more about that opportunity after this game is done in terms of the South Africa Ireland one. So we'll see on that front. But anyway, we'll move on then towards the last one, which is Wales, Australia. This is like, normally you would say this is the big game, but of course, you do have South Africa Ireland, so it's not going to get bigger than that one. But Wales, Australia, it's going to be a massive game, obviously, in terms of this group, because we've been very fortunate, kind of in this sense, that it kind of, I guess, see the big games already in Group C, with already Wales versus Fiji happening and Australia versus Fiji. So the only one left is this one, and this will obviously decide who kind of gets that 1 and 2, because that's what we all believe will happen in this case. So it's interesting. So like, what do you think on this front, just overall in this game? Like, what do you expect of it?
Well, I think this game by far does not secure either side's spot. Definitely the side that loses this match, because of course Fiji sitting on 6 points at the moment. They are a little bit higher than the Australians on the table, and I think those 2 extra bonus points that they got in their game up against the Welsh might heavily impact who goes through to this next stage. Of course, for the Fijians, they would prefer if Australia were to lose this game, but then if there was any chance that it was going to be Australia and Fiji going through, they do need the Aussies to pull off the win here against the Welsh.
Yeah.
And this Welsh side, don't get me wrong, like 2 bonus point wins, looking very impressive at the top of Pool C. There are still a few flaws in the game, though, that I'm sure they'll want to work on. Eddie Jones this week, he once again has said the Aussies, we're going to win this game. And the thing is, people seem to love to hate Eddie Jones, but one thing's undeniable. Yes, some people may call it a little bit of naivety or maybe a little bit of delusion, but he backs his side 110% of the time. Like, no matter who he puts out on the field, he says, this is a side that I believe if we play our game right, we can win this contest. And that's what he's gone with here. He's made a few changes. I actually think they're very good changes as well. Having Ben Donaldson at number 10, alongside Andrew Callaway, number 15. They've still stuck with the same wingers. I'd like to see a lot more of Marika Korombedi, because that man has been very quiet throughout this Rugby World Cup so far. Actually. Yeah. And then, for that back line of the Welsh, of course, they've got Josh Adams back in there, Dan Bigger, the angry man, with George North on the outside. I think those two are going to have a scrap before the end of the contest, depending on how it goes. And then Liam Williams back at 15. So I think it's going to be a good game. Overall, I feel like it's going to be a great way to end this weekend. And hopefully, it is a relatively close one going down to the wire. Those are the best kind of World Cup games in the group stage, aren't they? The runaway ones, yes, it's great for one side's points differential. It's great if you're watching as a supporter of the side that's got it one-sided. But outside of that, you want to see that close game that goes down to the wire. Get your heart pumping a little bit, edge of the seat kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with you there. It's one of those where this game it's really going to determine who kind of gets out. And it's interesting because, from a Fijian perspective, I actually do think they want the Australians to win this. Because even though, yes, there is you can maybe swing it the other way, but if Fiji are obviously planning to look, if they have it in their mindset already where, all we have to do now is, win the next 2 games by bonus points and we're through automatically. If Australia beats Wales, they can top the group. Fiji could actually top the group. And that's a good thing, by the way, from a Fijian standpoint, because now when you look at Group D, because they're going to have to face, either the winner of England or, if it's Argentina, Japan, or Samoa, they would rather not face England in terms of that quarterfinal. They'd rather face the likes of Argentina, the likes of, all those teams are listed. So it's interesting. So I just don't know. I mean, we could have, Fiji versus Argentina, for example, and they would much rather favor that battle compared to England. Trust me. Like, even though, yes, Fiji did obviously beat England in Twickenham, a massive win for them. Probably the biggest win they've probably had I can't even think of a bigger win they've had than that win, actually, in the last...
Isn't it interesting how, like, their first win over Australia, the first in 69 years, I should say, doesn't feel as big as that win up against the English?
It doesn't.
Like, it's weird, but that's just because of, I guess, what we've been able to see from the Fijians recently, knowing that it was eventually coming that they were going to be beating Australia. Exactly. I'll be honest, I think they beat them again if they play, like, 2 weeks' time. I think that Fiji would walk away with the victory. So it's an interesting one.
Because you were a bit hesitant, by the way, when I was saying, do you actually?
Yeah, I feel like overall Fiji, they would almost rather play England again. I think because they've got that mental, like they can go into that game thinking, well, we've beaten them before, and that is something that Fiji up against those top sides don't really get that chance of doing before. Yeah, I think that England up against the Fijians, of course, they will want to prove something and they may come out firing, but it's the unpredictability of Los Pumas at the moment because they seem like the other side that are going to make their way through. They haven't lit this World Cup on fire, but then they could all of a sudden be a whole different beast in those quarterfinals if they can just hang in there for long enough. If Japan were the second-ranked side, Fiji would definitely like to take them on. We'll see what those two sides have done in the past when they go head-to-head, and Fiji actually also have that victory over them. So I think
Fiji would wipe the floor. Maybe I'm wrong in saying this, by the way, guys, but I do think if Fiji were to go against Japan, I think Fiji would wipe the floor against them. I'm not saying by a huge margin in terms of maybe 20 plus, because again, it's a quarterfinal, so it's always going to be pretty tense. But I feel they'll win it by at least a try, or at least by 10 points, like something like in around that. I can see them definitely doing that if it was against Japan. But if it's against England, I think it's a different story now, because I think England, I got to give them credit. In both games they've played so far, they haven't really played in how can I say, in a style, stylistic way. They haven't really been able to kind of that first game was just down the dropsticks, which is it's pretty impressive actually to do it in that way to obviously win a game. The second one against Argentina, again, I'd say the first two tries weren't really the second try especially, which just came out of nowhere. But that third try they scored with, I think it was Freddie Stewart, if I'm not mistaken, that was the best try I think I've seen England score so far. Like where George Ford obviously kicked it down towards the left-hand side. Just that try shows me they have the capability of kind of beating a team out wide, which is what you need actually in a World Cup. In the World Cup stage. But no, it'll be fascinating. It'll be fascinating to see what happens on that front. Again, we're kind of thinking ahead here in terms of the knockouts, but it's obviously good to do that in that sense. But just before we kind of end this review, just let me know what you think in terms of the I guess the scoreline for this one, because we actually didn't even do a scoreline for the Scotland Tonga one. Like just first
I noticed that. I was all ready with my score, and
then
you were like,
do the scoreline for that one. Like, Scotland Tonga. Let's do that quickly. What do you think?
Scotland Tonga.
That one? Yeah.
24 points to 13 in favour of Scotland.
Okay, I like that. That's a good margin, I think. I actually was going to say something similar. I don't think it'll be too high scoring, but I'll say 20. I'll say 28. And then I'll say 28-15, like something around there. I think
the problem we've had is the rain lately in these games. And they have really dampened not just the ground, but also the amount of points that we're seeing scored.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more on that front. But yeah, now for the Wales-Australia one. This is probably the bigger one as well in terms of the two in this one. So what do you think on this say? Do you say the Welsh to win, or going to say the Wallabies?
Well, my original prediction was 32 points to 28 in favour of Wales. Yes. Now I'm a little bit concerned that the weather might end up making that about 10 points less for each side. But then I'm also wondering, at the moment for the Australians, don't get me wrong, in that game against Fiji, they should have had nothing to lose, but they played like a team that wanted to.
Yeah, exactly.
In this game, up against Wales, I'll be honest, I can kind of see the Australians coming in as underdog here and actually getting themselves a victory.
I was to say this, yeah. That's why there's a feeling Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, by the way.
I'm
So
going to
what
say
do you think is going to be the
Australia
scoreline?
by 4. I'm not going to tell you how many points each side's going to get
Oh,
because
okay.
it's too
Okay.
tricky to judge.
Fair
Both
enough.
sides, of course, would love to walk away with that bonus point, but yeah, we're going to go with the Australians to win it by 4.
Wow. Okay. Hey, that's a change from your prediction. So it's interesting to see that you've
Mm.
switched that now. But yeah, look, I did say even before this one, I guess going back to our predictions as well, that I did say the Wallabies would win this, and I'm sticking to my guns here. I think they can do it. Again, it's from a different point of view because, like you said, they're actually now seen as the underdog going into this one. But I do think they have the capability to do it. You know, Eddie Jones is pretty confident himself they're going to do it. So I don't know what that means if I'm more confident now with my prediction or if it makes it, he's just being hysterical once again. Well, we'll see what happens on that front. But it's going to be fascinating because, again, like I would normally say this is really a low scoring game, but I don't know. Like when you look at the previous kind of games these two sides have played, it's been pretty high scoring a lot of the time. And again, when I look back at the record, actually, because I can't remember the last time Wales have actually faced Australia in Australia. But for the last 4 matches, it's been pretty, high scoring, I believe. I think there's only one which is a bit low in that sense. But for the other 3, pretty high scoring. I think the last one, actually, the Wallabies won, if I'm not mistaken. It was like 43, like it was like in the 40s, the 30s. So it's a pretty high scoring game. But like you said, the conditions will have an impact on that sense. So yeah, we'll see what happens on that front. But yeah, anyway, we'll finish there, guys. Obviously, let us know in the comments what you guys think in terms of who you think will win the South Africa Ireland game, Scotland Tonga, as well as the Wales versus Wallabies one. Let us know in the comments. Like the video, guys. Subscribe to our channel, guys. Check out our respective channels, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time.